What's good, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Cover One Film Room, part, of course, of the Cover One Sports Network. I am one of your two hosts this evening, Anthony Prohaska, joined by Eric Turner. And
Yeah.
Eric, we were talking pre-show about the bit of luck that we've had these last several weeks, where it seems like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, there's some kind of news that drops, there's some kind of signing or some sort of important tidbit that drops for us that we get to break down in the film room. We got a little early week teaser with what happened with Taylor Rapp on Monday. Then we
Yep.
got more confirmation as the week went on about Sean McDermott being the defensive play caller. And then today, some Jordan Phillips news dropped for the Buffalo Bills. I feel like they're doing this on purpose to help us out with the show. What do you think? Thoughts? True or false?
Yeah, it's true. And, it's not easy to prepare for this show. This usually takes a few days to, round up all the film and, add the graphics and stuff that we're going to talk about. And so when guys like Jordan Phillips re-sign like he did today, it's sort of like a scramble. And honestly, the move Jordan Phillips, Taylor Rapp, and even the news out of the meetings about McDermott calling the plays, which we're going to cover tonight, all three of those topics and news items weren't really on the docket for this episode to start. We actually had a different topic for this show set up, but because of that news and the discussion and conversations that have occurred since then, we were like, you know what, we need to pivot. So we kind of had to start over, just 2 days ago, and start bringing some of this film back. And when I say bring film back, we're going way, way, way back to McDermott's days as a play caller in Carolina in 2015, 2016, which is going to be fun to watch and talk about. And we hope that you guys are as excited as we are.
Yeah, we're pumped, and it's funny too. It's kind of like a gift and a curse. We had news that dropped last week, so we pivoted off of last week's topic, and then we're going to put it to this week, and then we pivoted off of that topic again because of the news. And so it's like, nice, like there's some news that's dropped, like we got to respond, but then it's also like, crap, everything we prepared for is useless, and now we have to pivot. And went down the Taylor Rapp rabbit hole, went down that Sean McDermott rabbit hole, and less rabbit holing for Jordan Phillips because we have more of a semblance of an idea of who he is and how he fits into this defense, with what we saw from him in previous years in his first stint with the Buffalo Bills, and then once he returned last year for the 2022 season. But these pieces of news that keep dropping and the signings that keep happening are all part of this offseason cycle for the Buffalo Bills, where it's not necessarily the headline grabbing piece like Von Miller last year, but all of these economical moves or tidbits of information like the Sean McDermott defensive play calling piece that are all really starting to put the complete picture together for what this Buffalo Bills team can be going forward. We still have more free agency to go, and we still have more of the draft, but literally with each passing week, by the Wednesday of every week, we're getting more breadcrumbs and more puzzle pieces that are starting to put together what this 2023 Bills team really is going to look like.
Right. And it's exciting because it's almost like last offseason when we were going into the season and you had a new offensive coordinator. We were excited about, because we're X's and O's junkies, so we're excited about, what that offense may look like, the different pieces they may add, the different concepts they may add. So this offseason has been a little different now that we know McDermott's calling the plays. Some of the offseason acquisitions have been more on the moderate to lower end scale, but very high end or high value type guys where, hey, if they hit, they could hit really big on offense or defense. And so bringing back a guy like Phillips, we have guys in the chat room asking, is he worth $3 million? I saw that it could be even up over 4 with some escalators. I don't know if they're likely to be earned incentives or not, but it's a fair question because when we look at some of his stats, and when he was healthy, he was pretty effective, especially the first quarter, first third of the season. Jordan Phillips was a difference maker. And until Daquan Jones started getting going and we could see what he was going to become and what he brought as far as consistency was, Jordan Phillips was that standout player for the first few weeks. And, the health thing became an issue, but he was a solid backup, mainly at 3 tech, but also, did rotate in at nose tackle. So I do think that they I mean, if you look at that number, and again, it just was released, so we don't know the details about it. If you look at that number, you're like, man, is it really worth it? So I think at this point, it's fair to ask that. But I do think he's his best self when he's in Buffalo. He's going to play his best game when healthy in Buffalo. Last season, he finished with 19 total pressures. He had an 8% run stop percentage, which was second on the team behind Ed Oliver. He had a 1.3 average depth of tackle versus the run, which was number one among the defensive tackles, 1.3 yards. That's really, really good. And he only played 32% of the snaps. So that's where, you know, you do ask yourself, and Roy does, he goes, hey, is Phillips worth that $3 million? I don't know. I just like that they bring him back. And again, as Bean talks about, you know, plug a hole and see what it, you know, let the board come to him when the draft comes. But I do have a question for you. Not just your reaction to the signing, but what does that mean for the defensive tackle position? Because you got Ed Oliver up over 10 million AAV. You have obviously Daquan Jones. I think his number is like at 8.5 million. Then you have Tim Settle at 4.3. And then I think Phillips's number is probably going to fall somewhere in that $3 to $4 million range. So you ask yourself, okay, that's 4 deep at defensive tackle. When a lot of us were thinking, hey, they may take a day 2, day 3 defensive tackle. So where, with that allocation, that amount of money allocated to defensive tackle, how does that affect a draft?
You know, it's such, thank you very much, Morning Mind, for being here and for the super chat and for the nice comment too. She says, thanks for all the great vids, guys. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. You know, that question is funny because I appreciate the Phillips signing, but it also annoys the hell out of me because of where it puts like that decision and that move. Because so right now, even with the Jordan Phillips signing, the Bills have no defensive tackle signed for 2024. They have nobody. Daquan Jones is a UFA. Ed Oliver's a UFA. Phillips, like everybody, Settle, nobody is signed after this season. So before the Phillips news, it was like, okay, you really have a top 3 of Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, Tim Settle, and then it's the guys like Ilianku and Brandon Bryant and a whole bunch of people that I'm sure people don't even know who they are, how to pronounce their name. And so it made sense. Okay, you don't have anybody signed through 2024. You don't have a ton of top tier or depth overall for the grouping going into 2023. They're probably going to have to address the defensive line. But now they signed Jordan Phillips, and I think it makes not addressing the defensive tackle room in the draft, if the board doesn't fall your way, I think it makes it potentially a little more palatable, but it doesn't move my needle off enough in terms of being like, well, defensive tackle is good. They don't have to address it in the draft. I still don't think the idea or the notion of some kind of move potentially happening, whether it's Tim Settle or Ed Oliver, maybe push comes to shove in some regard with one of them going by the wayside, potentially given their cap hit and given the lack of term on their contracts going forward. But for me, a defensive tackle, it's still a need on this team. I think it moves down maybe a little tick or two, but you're still not set up from a youth perspective. You're still not set up long-term. And honestly, you could still use some more skill set diversity and impact on that defensive line in general, but especially on the interior, given how the Bills like to rotate and also that injury history. You know, Jordan Phillips, when he's healthy, he's a solid quality player. But what we've seen from him the past, 3 seasons, that injury history is a legitimate piece. So I don't think you can count on him to play an entire season. And kudos to him last year for playing with one shoulder down the stretch, but add that on top of it, right? Like, not only does he not necessarily move that needle completely, but you add the injury history. If anything, you still want to hedge your bets, because if he's defensive tackle 3 or 4, you know you're not getting a full season out of him.
Right, and so we're looking at the D tackles.
Cortez Broughton, that's the one I forgot. Damn it!
And you see, Phillips has not been in here yet, but as I said, I talked about those numbers, and 11.59% of their cap is allotted to the defensive tackle position. But like you said, beyond this season, there's no one. So I know if they did move on from Tim Settle, I think it's like $2 to $3 million they'd have to eat up. And so I don't know, man. I really don't know. It's tough to say.
His dead cap for this year would be if they release him after June 1st, it's a 2023 dead cap hit of 3.8 million and a 2024 dead cap hit of another 1.3. So you're looking at 5.1 dead cap if he's released after June 1st. If you trade him after June 1st, it goes to about $3 million in terms of dead cap. So you save about a couple mil there, but it's still not ideal. Again, it doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's still not an ideal situation.
No, you're essentially burning money, right? You're
Correct.
essentially
you're
burning money.
Fire.
Yeah, you're setting it on fire. And so I get it. Like, I get why they brought him back. What's going on, Richard? I get it, but the money is going to matter. The details of that is going to matter, because if they are, because I assumed, and I'm sure like some of the mock drafts that you've done, you're like, D tackle, sometimes in the second round, Keanu Benton, guys like that, third round, Roy, and there are several defensive tackles in the, day 2, day 3 that you could plug in and be like, this is a very good backup to a 3 tech or to a nose tackle.
Absolutely.
So if they were to bring out one of those guys, then they got to make a decision with Phillips or Settle. Or, I think Ed Oliver's probably the long shot, the lowest percentage of being moved. But, who knows with that, with that position and that player, especially if they already kind of pitched some numbers to him and, they're that far apart. But with that said, it's interesting that I think it probably plays a bigger impact on the draft than I had expected when you're looking at it from the top down at the defensive tackle position. And when I initially, thought that they brought him back, I thought it was just, hey, that 1 year minimum deal. But
everybody
a little more.
1 year, 1.77 million, like you expected. And then it's like, oh, 3 million. Okay. And then it's like up to 4.6. And again, it probably has escalators. We don't know if it's not likely to be earned and so on and so forth, but that's a decent chunk given what they've already allocated, to your point.
Right. And especially when you kind of look at some of the, I don't know, the stats when it comes to him and the defensive line. Let me see if I can bring these up on this separate screen here. Where is he at? All right. So here are some stats on the defensive line, DNs and defensive line. And so you can see Jordan Phillips is down this way, and I have it sorted by pressure percentage. So he had a 7.9 pressure percentage last year, which among the defensive tackles is second. It's ahead and tied with Daquan Jones, I should say. Just ahead of Shaq Lawson but Tim Settle. But look at Tim Settle. This is, again, so we're talking about, hey, maybe he is a piece that you could move on from, but who's going to take him, right? So I don't know how much value he has. I know he has value to the Bills as a backup defensive nose tackle to Daquan Jones, which is primarily what he played with the Bills last year. And even with the Commanders, a lot of the reps he had were as a nose tackle in their odd front or as a shade nose tackle, kind of like what the Bills do. But he was pretty disappointing for me. I thought he made most of his plays that I have saved were actually versus the run, where he occupied a couple guys, which again is part of his job, and then allowed Milano and Edmonds to make plays. So, but from a pass rushing sense, which, that was talked about a lot, is like a lot of his pressures and sacks were from inside of that nose tackle position. I was unhappy with the production they got out of him when you consider how much he made last year.
Absolutely. And when you look at this grouping, and in particular, Phillips and Settle, granted, down the stretch, Phillips was banged up, including heavily towards the end of the year. Dude was literally playing with one shoulder, which he deserves, some credit to a degree, him trying to gut it out. But like I mentioned last night on Disguised Coverage, I think it also speaks to the grouping that they had to thrust out a guy there who had one shoulder when he really probably shouldn't have been out there. But if you look at weeks 12 through 18, down the stretch last year, Von Miller went down in week 12. So weeks 12 through 18, if you're looking at pass rush productivity, there were 213 qualifying defensive linemen for their pass rush productivity metric, weeks 12 through 18. Greg Rousseau was tied for 22nd. AJ Epinesa was 29th. Jordan Phillips was tied for 122nd with Shaq Lawson. Tim Settle was 192nd out of those 213.
You had to go to the next screen, next.
I literally
show
did.
the next 300.
I had to filter to put 200 per page and then go to page 2 to be able to get to it. Some other numbers for reference. Boogie Basham was 179th out of 213. Shaq Lawson was tied for 122nd with Jordan Phillips, and Daquan Jones, not a pass rushing force, was tied for 102nd. So not great numbers from the guys on the interior at all. Not to get too sidetracked, but who would have guessed that AJ Epinesa finished as a top 30 edge down the stretch in pass rush productivity, and that Groot Groot, when Von Miller was healthy, was around top 12, so he barely fell, and that was him on an injured ankle as well. Groot had a better year than people realize. AJ Epinesa had a better year down the stretch in terms of improvement. Conversation for another time. But again, to your pass rush point, you didn't get what you ideally needed out of Settle and Phillips. Granted, Phillips was banged up, but for a position grouping that was severely impacted by Von Miller, you needed more presence from anyone and everyone that you could, but you got less of it overall, but especially from the interior. And whether, even if you want to attribute it because, well, yeah, Von has such a large impact, their performance significantly dropped in a multitude of ways. We saw it in a multitude of games down the stretch when you watch the tape. And when you pair that with the metrics from a pass rush standpoint, it is concerning, especially knowing how much they were relied upon to get to the quarterback and get home.
Yeah, and just the investment in them, financially. These are guys they brought in to make a difference up the middle, and that is so important in this defense. If there's one thing I learned from going back and watching that 2015 and 2016 film of McDermott's defense back then, was that Kawan Short and Star Lotulelei were huge for that defense.
Man, prime Star Lotulelei was so good and so
a monster. Watch, he was a monster. He's very much in the same vein that we talk about, like Chris Jones nowadays when he's rushing from inside, just unstoppable with a single blocker. And so, Short had some really good years under Sean McDermott, especially in that 2015, 2016 window when they had made the Super Bowl. So, John says all those sack numbers that I had just shown on the screen are going to go up with McDermott. Frazier just sucks. Okay, Frazier doesn't
harsh.
suck. It's a little strong, but we're going to give you some airtime on that. But it's a good segue because we're going to talk about McDermott and his play calling. That news came out. And I got to agree with John, though. I do think sack numbers will go up. And I'm going to spit out some of those numbers here in a second. But I want to show from the top down. Let's start at the top. Some of the DVOA stuff historically for the Panthers from 2011 to 2016 when Sean McDermott was the defensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers. So here's Football Outsiders. That first year in 2011, they were ranked 32nd on defense. The next year, 2012, 13th. 2013, they were 3rd. 2014, they were 15th. And then the Super Bowl season, 15-1 season, they were 3rd overall. And then the final year before he came to Buffalo, the defense was ranked 10th. So there's some variance in there, but you can see how he started to kind of incorporate what he wanted. And you also got to keep in mind, like, these are the years early on in his tenure, 2011, 2012, 2013 is when they acquired, Cam Newton, first of all, was his first year. I think it was 2011 was McDermott's first year. That was Cam Newton draft. That next year, 2012, was Luke Kuechly. The year after that was Star Lotulelei and Kawan Short, 1-2, first and second round. And that's when that defense started to build up to who they are and kind of, shape McDermott's defense into what it is even today.
Yeah, and you also had some smatterings of injuries mixed in there. Kuechly went down for a bit in those runs. Charles Johnson got banged up a bit. Greg Hardy, who's a horrible person, but was a significant piece of their defensive line, got booted from the league out of nowhere, and so that affected their defensive line. But you saw Sean McDermott, from an identity perspective, build that team around what he had, similar to what he did with Buffalo. And then you had a lot of guys who went from being kind of nobodies like Josh Norman to all of a sudden becoming an all-pro type of corner. And you had this nasty, violent group on all three levels. Yes. And the type of style that they played really spoke to the identity that Sean McDermott wanted to build. And I think that's a very interesting piece. We had that comment that you pulled up saying that the sack numbers will go up with McDermott. I think you legitimately could see that. And I know you believe that as well. Like Sean McDermott is, for as much as he has had his hands on this defense and everybody, that conversation is still going. Like, was it McDermott's defense? Was it Frazier's? Yada, yada. Sean McDermott's defense, from what we saw in Carolina and knowing about his tutelage under Eagles defensive coordinator Jim Johnson, he's an aggressive dude. And from a front perspective, he loves to mug A-gaps and try and confuse quarterbacks. And he wants physicality. He wants violence. He wants attitude. And he wants to build around the players that he has. And I think you could make that case. And I don't think I'm not knocking Leslie Frazier. And I know that's kind of the popular thing to do. And I know there were large scale failures under his tenure, but the Bills had very successful defenses under Leslie Frazier. But I do expect some sort of not necessarily schematic change, but a play style or philosophical change on this defense under Sean McDermott, knowing what we saw from him in Carolina and then knowing, where he cut his teeth in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you kind of coined it in the way like in your face and violent, because that's what they were. And I think that's the contrast we're gonna see. They were up in your face a lot more. They were up near the line of scrimmage a lot more. Whether that they stayed in that afterwards was kind of the mix. But listen to some of these stats that I got from PFF. So over the course of the last 2 seasons in Carolina with Sean McDermott as a defensive coordinator, so 2015 and 2016. Their pressure percentage over those 2 years was 6.8%. That was 3rd overall. Very good. Their blitz percentage was top 10. It was ranked 10th at 25%. Over those 2 years, to John's point, 104 sacks. Over that 2-year span, that was ranked 2nd overall. 104 sacks. Yes, please give me 50 plus sacks a year. Their sack percentage, so it kind of gives you a little more efficiency, was 7%. That was tied for 2nd most. Their sacks, this is where it gets interesting. Sacks on 3rd down, right? Sacks on 3rd down over those 2 years, they had 46, which was 2nd overall. Sacks are blitzed on 3rd downs. And again, the money down. This is why I look at some of these stats, those big 3rd downs, which the Bills had issues sometimes, especially 3rd and longs this last year. So 3rd down blitz numbers. They had 17 sacks over those 2 years. That was 7th overall. So when they blitzed, they got 17 sacks over those 2 years. To put it in perspective, in 2022, when the Bills blitzed, they got 2 sacks on 3rd down. 2. That was ranked 31st.
I was going to say, not good.
Not good at all. Sack percentage on 3rd down over those 2 years in Carolina, 15.7%, which was 3rd overall. Perspective, for the Bills in 2022, their sack percentage was 5% on 3rd down. Oof. That was ranked 31st. That's unacceptable. And I think that bend but don't break philosophy, how they tried pairing it with the aggressive offense of Josh Allen, for the most part, consistently, it was good. But I think they need a contrast. And I think Sean McDermott will bring that.
Yeah, I mentioned Jim Johnson a couple times. I know you and I have both spoken about him. One of the best defensive coordinators of all time, known for really taking that Eagles team and pairing with Andy Reid. And I did some research on him to tie it into McDermott. I also found out, fun fact, Andy Reid, when he took over as the head coach of the Eagles, he wanted Marvin Lewis to be his defensive coordinator, and Lewis accepted a job elsewhere. And so Andy Reid brought on Jim Johnson.
Where'd he go, to Baltimore?
Yes. And so Jim Johnson, again, very well respected as a defensive guru of sorts, famed for his creative zone blitzes, double A gap looks, and exotic game plans. I'm going to read some things pertaining to Jim Johnson and then some things to Sean McDermott, and there's just so much overlap. So again, Jim Johnson, creative zone blitzes, double A gap looks, exotic game plans. A hallmark of his scheme was pressure, fast, aggressive, physical, violent, and attitude. These are all quotes from Philadelphia newspapers and reporters and and guys breaking down film. Shout out to Fran Duffy, who does film breakdowns on the Eagles. He's where I got a lot of this stuff, which was awesome because, I don't have like 2003 Eagles game tape.
And he's very, very trustworthy as far as the eye and breaking down film.
Very tremendous. Another hallmark for Jim Johnson, changing the pre to post snap picture, causing havoc, creating confusion. Here's a great quote from Asante Samuel. One thing I got from being around Jim was his system was his system. He didn't change. So listen to this and tell me who it sounds like. One thing I got from being around Jim was his system was his system. He didn't change a whole lot from week to week, but it was all about finding out what the opponent's weak point was on offense. His dogs were his dogs, and he was going to cut them loose on you one way or another. Sounds very similar to articles breaking down Sean McDermott's Super Bowl appearing Carolina Panther defense, talking about how Sean McDermott's got the 4-3 system. He's taken on Jim Johnson's scheme that's involved sophisticated zone blitzes and put his own stamp on it. He calls himself a player-friendly defensive coordinator, building around the strengths of his players. And he says what's important is, rather than trying to tie up his players with intricate schemes and things, which we certainly can do, granted, it's like a game of chess, but at the same time, a player has to be able to execute and play fast and fundamentally sound. So we keep hearing these buzzwords of fundamentals and fast and physical and pressure and blitzes. And that Sean McDermott, Jim Johnson system is a 4-3 system based on pressuring the quarterback in the run and the pass. You do it with attitude. You do it with violence. You have your core ideology or philosophy, and then you turn dials left and right based on your opponent's weaknesses and trying to pinpoint those weaknesses and catering game plans. It sounds tremendously exciting, and there's proof in the pudding. And again, there's the legitimate track record to this, knowing what Sean McDermott did in Carolina.
Yeah, and to Tristan's question, he asked, you think McDermott might play a little more press man on the outside? Absolutely. I think that's going to be a thing. I think they're going to get in the face of guys. And again, sometimes they'll press and sometimes they'll bail into some of those zone blitzes. You're going to see some of them tonight. Coincidentally enough, we have some pressure plays from McDermott. And you can almost feel or sense the difference between what you're going to see on the film from McDermott's defense than what you saw with Frazier. And I will say, I think part of Frazier's defense and bend but don't break philosophy is intertwined with analytics, because analytics do tell you to, hey, play those two high coverages, make them dink and dunk their way down the field and have to do that consistently. So I'm not going to put it all on, hey, it's just a conservative coach in Leslie Frazier. No, I do think they were playing analytics, and a lot of what they were doing is ahead of some defenses. But again, I think when you're looking at the team as a whole, that whole philosophy, almost kind of building it like the Colts, where you get up 25, 30 points and then you unleash this pass rush, that complement didn't work well enough to get to the Super Bowl and to win a Super Bowl. So I think this is a change in the right direction. And, I do like what he's going to bring, and we're going to get into some of that. So keep this in mind when we're looking at some of these, the film here in a second. Last season, pressure on third down from the Bills, from a defensive-minded head coach. They were ranked, they were 37% pressure on third down. That was ranked 27th. That's not good enough. And all the analytics tell you, yeah, the defense was good, especially in third downs. But you want to get pressure, and you want to affect the quarterback, much like we're going to see in this 2015, 2016 film. And the Bills, actually, it's surprising. This one surprised me the most, Anthony, this stat. Last season on third down, the Bills blitzed 34.9% of the time.
Oof.
That was ranked 6th. I did not know that. No. And again, maybe it had something to do with Von going down, but we talked about the interior defensive linemen and even some of the edge rushers and how overall they weren't getting enough pressure, and they definitely weren't finishing as much as we'd like. I think this stat of being ranked 6th in blitz percentage on third down, I didn't see that coming.
Here's one too as well, not just on third down, but so from a blitz percentage, weeks 1 through 11, again, when they had a healthy Von Miller, they had a 15% blitz rate, which was 28th overall. Again, weeks 12 through 18, when Von was down, that blitz rate went from 15% up to 24%, and they jumped from 28th to 14th. So not only were you seeing it on third down, but you were seeing it overall.
Oh, that checks out. That totally checks out, man. So let's get into some of the film. And so I have both angles, the all-22 and the end zone, but I'm going to kind of go quickly through the all-22 version just because the coverages aren't too different than what the Bills run now. But this is a Johnson staple right here. So you have Kuechly up near the line of scrimmage right here. So that means the center has to account for them, or the offensive line has to account for him. And then what they're going to do is they're going to send Thomas Davis, and they're going to send Trey Boston right here from depth. All right, from depth. The Eagles with Jim Johnson would run this Dawkins all the time.
Yeah, Dawkins and Quentin Michael blitzing from those
off the nickel and safety. Yep. So you see the sack there on Wilson there. So watch from the end zone angle and how they attack this protection. So on the snap, you're going to get the defensive tackle right here slanting across the face of the guard. They're going to bring Thomas Davis, but he occupies, and you see him attack this inside shoulder. He occupies Marshawn Lynch, which means here comes Trey Boston from depth, and he's able to bring down the quarterback. But it's important here. What's important to note is how the defensive end pops out, right? That fire zone blitz, he pops out, takes away that hot route or sight adjustment over the middle, forces the quarterback to hold it on just a little bit longer. The blitz gets home.
And this is a good way to, we've talked about it so much with simulated pressures and creepers, the idea of dictating protection or confusing protection and making offenses waste blockers or players. There is 6 blockers kept in for the Seattle Seahawks here with the 5 offensive linemen plus Marshawn Lynch.
Yep.
There's only 5 rushers. Like, it's 6 versus 5, but the Panthers still created a free runner because of the pre-snap look and then the post-snap blitz. And that's something that, again, Jim Johnson believed in. His whole idea was you don't let offenses dictate to you. You have to put more pressure on the quarterback in every game, trying to figure out how to put that pressure on the quarterback. And that's something that McDermott took as well. Like, I literally watched Fran Duffy break down similar clips like this in preparation for this episode. It's almost the identical type of blitz structure and concept from the Panthers here. And this is a McDermott staple. You're trying to change the pre to post snap picture on the quarterback. You're trying to dictate to the offense and force their hand. And again, even if it doesn't work, what is it? It's physical, it's violent, it's you kind of forcing the offense's hand one way or another by bringing these types of looks and changing things on the QB.
Yeah, and keep in mind, guys, I didn't preface it, but most of these clips, these are third downs. So they're bringing 5 and 6 man pressures on third downs. So here's another one, this one against the Seahawks as well. Again, guys up near line of scrimmage, right? In your face down here. And they're going to send the linebacker again, and then they're sending this defender off the edge. And watch him again. Third down, running back occupies one, and that's Freddie Jackson picking up that pressure from number 31. You see Thomas Davis get home from this angle. So here it is right here. So here comes Freddie Jackson. He's going to pick up and choose 31. Well, that leaves that free runner right here to Russ Wilson again. It's good stuff because you see this edge defender pop out and carry this guy up the seam. Like, this is some fun stuff. And again, aggressive. This is in the red zone. Aggressive, in your face. And they have the Bills have linebackers like Milano that can get home, just like Thomas Davis. Evan Bernard, that's one of the things he did so well at Baylor is rushing and coming at the quarterback and adding on in some of those rushers from Dave Aranda's defense. So I just love the numbers game here. I love the aggression and getting those free runners for your talented linebackers.
And that's an interesting point with how much we've talked about who fills the shoes of Tremaine Edmunds. You mentioned it with Bernard now. That was my favorite quality of his when you watch the tape at Baylor. His blitzing ability, he comes forward like a heat-seeking missile, and he's either getting to the quarterback or he's running through somebody or detonating on somebody, whether it's an offensive lineman, running back, tight end, whoever. This type of scheme from Sean McDermott suits his play style and Matt Milano's as well. You have aggressive gap shooting style linebackers who play off of instinct and quickness and fast twitch, quick trigger ability. That type of scheme works. And then you also have some athleticism in the rest of your defense to be able to play further games and drop an edge or drop somebody on the interior of the defensive line and get really creative with your looks.
Right. And so this is the coverage on the back end is 3/2. It's basically like their palms coverage with the 2x2 set on this play. But I want to show you the end zone angle because you're going to have from this angle, you're going to see Mario Addison, a defensive end, pop out right here. And again, the Panthers get that free runner and the quarterback's flushed and he's not able to complete the pass. Again, 3rd and long, as you can see. But look at the end zone angle, this odd man front. This is a defensive end. This is another defensive end. You got a nose tackle. And this is a D tackle. I think that's Kawan Short over here off the right side. So then you have Kuechly and Davis as well. So this is a traditional, nickel type look, but they just changed the front and structure to confuse the offensive line. And so watch what happens post snap. I got it drawn up. So you're going to get 2 guys off the edges and then just one up the middle. And watch how they get that free runner. This guy pinches inside and you get the free runner right here, but he also gets some wide pressure right here from Thomas Davis versus the running back. Chaos. He's trying to get out the back of the pocket there and complete it. And even if he does complete it, he's not going to get the first down. It's chaos. It's creative. It's different. There's very defensive structures. That's what the Bills need. They don't have to get crazy. They don't have to get crazy like a lot of people are expecting them to. They have to just present different things, different structures, alignments, and tendencies overall on film.
This is something we talked about earlier in the offseason when breaking down the, kind of the status of what the Bills finished the season as and who they needed to be going forward. You almost have kind of like a bare front look on the interior here with the center and both guards covered. Exactly. But look at the alignment. Like, one guard is covered by a defensive end in Mario Addison. Like you said, the other one is covered by Luke Kuechly. And then guess what? They're both dropping. And then you're getting a blitz from the slot corner to the right in number 26, who wasn't even on our screen to begin with. And then you're getting a blitz from the other side on Thomas Davis. These are the types of, exactly like you said, this is what we were clamoring for. And it's not just because it's what we personally want. This is what the Bills needed more of. There was, even though this Bills defense was on the whole largely successful, there was too much predictability at the end of the day, especially in high leverage situations where it was like, okay, guess what? Here comes like a 4-3 over front. Okay, here it is. 4 rushers. Here you go. Rinse and repeat. And we saw that a lot from this defense. Sean McDermott, he likes to pull different levers. He likes to play games like this. And what's also cool about this front, this is confusing and getting to, at this point in his career, a very veteran Carson Palmer at quarterback, a guy who is very experienced seeing different kinds of blitzes, recognizing games, knowing who his hot routes are and what adjustments he needs to make. So being able to fool a legitimate veteran QB at this point, and this is when the Cardinals were actually a really good squad in the NFC, being able to confuse a veteran quarterback like that with this front and having this type of impact with a switch up and that aggressiveness, it's extremely enticing for what this Bills defense could be, especially going into a year paired with a high functioning, high firepower offense like Josh Allen.
Yeah, and this is what happens. This is one-on-one here. And so these guys are thinking, hey, these are the immediate threats. They got to cover them up. Well, obviously, Kuechly pops out. Well, now he's going to have to pick him up. And this guy, the left tackle, has to somehow get out there. It's damn near impossible. And again, that's what creates the pressure on Palmer and, again, gets the defense off the field.
And the timing of it was great too. Right when Kuechly popped out and right when 26 came, it was almost like right when the Cardinals were like, oh, cool, we're set with our protection. And then it's like, crap, they're not doing what we thought they did. And again, that's not by accident. That's by design. You saw it in Philly. You saw it with Carolina. That's a Sean McDermott thing.
Yeah, attacking protections. We always talk about it. So here's, again, that in-your-face mentality, 3rd down Super Bowl, press man coverage on the back end. So watch the coverage as it unfolds, just press man and pressure up the middle against Peyton Manning. So let's look at it from the end zone angle. Again, odd front, center's covered up, right? You have Thomas Davis as an on-the-ball linebacker on the line of scrimmage to the running back side. And the offensive line is once again kind of running like a 5-0 protection where it's man on man. So what the defensive line does is they kind of pinch and then they widen post snap. And as they widen, you see they're all covered up. So you got 2 for 1 here, and then everyone else is 1-on-1. Well, no one's got Kuechly right up the middle, and that's an easy sack for Kuechly on that play. So attacking protections, letting your dogs run free, right? Sending them at the quarterback, being aggressive. And, Davis is to the running back side. This is probably the hot too. He's covered up. He can't get rid of it to the running back. Everyone else is, covering down, and just Kuechly's in his face, and Manning's, he's forced to eat it there.
It's such a good design from the pre-snap alignment on the interior, then combined with what they do post-snap, like you highlighted, because with how Denver IDs this and assigns their protection, the Panthers, this isn't by accident. They open up that A gap for Luke Kuechly, and it's because of their pre-snap alignment and who Denver IDs. Everybody's got a man, but guess what? Like you said, Thomas Davis drops out off the left. So now that right tackle was thinking he had to pick up Thomas Davis. He's been wasted. Thomas Davis picks up the hot. You got a double team on Charles Johnson there, number 95. And then you've got one-on-ones everywhere else. But because you confuse the protection, and also I would highly imagine, and I think you would agree, again, I don't want to speak for you, this is probably Carolina and Sean McDermott knowing, okay, this is what Denver likes to do. We've scouted them. These are what their protection rules are. Let's attack those rules with this pre-snap alignment and create a free runner. This is by design, and it's with a really good design in a high leverage situation. And you could tell they took what Denver does and used it against them and dictated to them, which is a philosophical idea under Sean McDermott.
Yeah, and I think we're going to say it multiple times in this breakdown, dictating. Not bend but don't break, not react to what the offense is dictating. And react to what they're doing. You're dictating now, and this is what the Panthers did a lot of in 2015 and 2016. Another odd man front here, and again, guys in different positions. This is a defensive end. I think this is Mario Addison right there. Thomas Davis is over here on the line of scrimmage off the edge. The Panthers are running a little twist inside, so you're going to have Kuechly and the nose tackle slanting one way, and you're looping Addison inside against his protection. And Kuechly obviously just is a stud. He's able to beat the offensive lineman and the running back there. But again,
it's ridiculous.
Dictating and affecting the quarterback. And there's so much chaos and hunting going on that the quarterback could barely even look downfield. And especially in these third and medium, the third and long situations, there's no way for him to set up when you have these type of dogs hunting.
I think this is what's also exciting for a defensive grouping that across the whole, like what we've talked about with the interior defensive line and on the edge without Von Miller, Groot is kind of getting up there, but the Bills don't really have a ton of straight guys who can get you buckets up on the defensive line, guys who are just like, you know what, cool, just let them rush. They can win one-on-one. It is what it is. So sometimes you have to get creative. And I think this was lacking. You and I have talked about it. These types of games and stunts weren't utilized enough for the Bills, whether in pass rush or run stunts and, trying to change gaps and trying to confuse and penetrate. We saw a lot of just straightforward attacking. This is a nice, aggressive type of style that, again, use that buzzword. This is the type of like dictating a defense can do. You are forcing the hand of an offense. You are forcing them to properly ID who's rushing and from where. You are testing their pass protection rules. You are testing their pre-snap identification and their post-snap execution. And that's hard. Like on the opposite side, what Leslie Frazier was like, no, we're going to make you dink and dunk for 15 plays to score. McDermott's a bit on the opposite end. Like, we're going to force you to diagnose all this havoc and chaos and make you read it out and beat us with it.
Yeah, here's a six-man pressure from a double A mug look, right? So, but it's not linebackers in the A gaps. Again, it's defensive ends. Your linebacker is right here, Thomas Davis. This is Shaq Thompson. And then I think this is AJ Klein right here off the other edge. So they're in a 4-3 look, but they have everyone reversed. So that forces the offensive line to communicate and change where they're setting the protection to. And they're just not messing around on this play. Panthers are playing press man coverage. They're sending 6 guys, and you get the matchup that wins. You get a linebacker on a running back. He's able to throw him off to the side and make a play on the ball and Phillip Rivers right at the line of scrimmage. Just, again, attack-oriented. Win your matchups. Let the dogs run free and let them hunt. And man, McDermott did it a bunch from so many different looks in 2015 and 2016.
Yeah, this is a beautiful one. Like knowing, okay, this is a running back who pass protection isn't his strong suit. Let's set him up against a physical linebacker and AJ Klein, who's a good blitzer, who was good in his time in Buffalo as a blitzer, let alone when he was closer to his prime in Carolina. And you just see the easy mismatch. The Chargers slide that protection from the left tackle all the way over. Like, this is by design. This is them playing their protection rules. This is Carolina using their rules against them. Bingo. This is a really beautiful thing. This is you taking what, and I want to keep driving that home because I feel like it's so important and people don't think about that enough. Like, to be able to scout a team and know, okay, in this situation, they do this. In that situation, they do that. That's not what wins you games. It's being able to take that and use that against them. When you can use what a team does against them and make them vulnerable with it, that's how you win championships. That's how you get to Super Bowls. That's what Carolina did. Like, this is a tried and true recipe that Sean McDermott learned and then wielded. And
the thing that I'm most excited about is, there's a lot of rumblings about, hey, how did Eric Washington, get by and not get fired, or he's not developing guys and all that talk. Well, now with McDermott in every single defensive meeting,
good point.
And with his thumb on everything, they're not going to get away with some lazy game plans and stunts and games. No, he's going to have a hand in every single thing that goes on in this game plan and strategy, more so than when Frazier was running things. I feel that, and we're going to see a lot more, again, aggressiveness and dictating by the Bills defense, and especially the defensive line and front seven when it comes to creating pressures, because that's what McDermott wants to do. He wants to be aggressive. He wants to be violent. Here's another one, man across the board, crazy exotic look up the middle. Yep. Again, another third down. Oh, that's the all 22, the last one. We'll just skip that one then. I'm sorry. Here's another one. Now you got Kuechly head up over that nose tackle, over the center. You have Thomas Davis coming up into that A gap. Watch him unleash again. one-on-one. Rodgers tries extending the play. Kuechly's there again, and then I think it's Starr that finishes. I mean, just waves, right?
Exactly.
Whether they're all up at the line of scrimmage and they're all coming, or again, they have 4 at the line of scrimmage or 5, and then they have one pop out and they bring a linebacker and safety from the 2nd and 3rd level. Either way, they come in waves, and that's the type of suffocating that we wanted to see last year, especially in some of those games against those, upper tier quarterbacks where we're just sitting back as a defense and letting them pick apart the defense.
Suffocating is a great word. The one I was going to use for this one was smothering. And that's what you're doing to Aaron Rodgers here in the pocket. Like, look at Rodgers trying to navigate, and everywhere he steps and everywhere he looks, like, it's literally just like wave after wave. Like, he's like, I can go over. Oh no, I can't. Okay, let me go. Like, well, like everywhere he goes, there's nowhere to go. He thinks a door is open. Every doorknob that he tries to turn is locked. And this is that.
Crazy.
Nice.
Where are you going? Nowhere.
Exactly, nowhere. Oh, nice tie-in. He's completely hemmed in. Like, the pocket is compressed. It's broken. The depth and the width are all compromised. There is nowhere to go. And that type of front is paired with the physicality from a coverage standpoint. That's you challenging the offense. You are saying, ID our fronts and ID our pressures, then pick it up, and then we're also challenging your receivers to also get open. And that's a key point too, right? Like, granted, the Panthers had very good individual players on the defensive line and at linebackers, but their secondaries weren't what the Buffalo Bills have. Granted, they had Norman when he was very good, and they had some James Bradbury after Sean McDermott, but Kurt Coleman wasn't a tremendous standout safety. Trey Boston wasn't a sick standout safety. They had Roman Harper in that last one, who was a bit long in the tooth.
He was like 41 or 40 years old then.
Started to roll him through. Like, they did not have a Jordan Poyer and a Micah Hyde, and Norman was very good. Trey is good in a different way. They didn't have the studs on the back end that the Bills have. Now, I think they had more studs in their front 7 than the Bills do. So it'll be interesting to see how McDermott balances that and wields things accordingly. But when you have that type of attack mindset and that ability to dictate to offenses and pressure them over and over in the pass and the run and use their rules against them, it could potentially cover up for a little bit of a lack of talent in your front, because the scheme and the physicality and the violence can trump that talent and raise the level of everybody up front.
Yeah, not only did the Panthers have 104 sacks over that 2-year span, 2015 and 2016, but they were also tops. I think they were top 1 or 2 in interceptions. Kurt Coleman in 2015 had 9 interceptions at safety. Luke Kuechly had 6 in 2015. Josh Norman had 4, and as did Thomas Davis in 2015. In 2016, we're going to see, let's see, Kurt Coleman had 4, Thomas Davis 3. So they were getting interceptions, but they were also getting sacks. And that's what the Bills need to get to. They need to be aggressive. It's very much like, I hate to bring them up, is the Chiefs and Spagnuolo. Like, they're aggressive. Will they give up some big plays? Absolutely. But they're aggressive. They're going to create turnovers. They're going to create havoc, and they're going to get the ball back to their offense. And so if McDermott can bring a fraction of that type of hunting going on that side of the ball to this Bills defense with some of the talent that they do have, I think it could really complement the Bills offense. I'm going to keep saying that, again, Frazier's defense was very good. It was a great idea when you think about building the team that way to complement the offense, but it didn't work, and that's okay. Move on. Try something new. And I think that Sean McDermott's he's got the philosophy and strategy to really do what many of us have been saying for so many years. So if they were going to make a change at DC and have a guy come in as a new play caller, I want it to be Sean McDermott, right? We talked about that a few months ago. Like, if it's going to be anyone, it should be Sean McDermott.
He's got a tremendous track record with, again, who he studied under and then what he looked like as a full-time DC in Carolina. You read off the numbers. And again, the parallels, we're not just saying it just to say it. Like, that attack-minded, sack-generating, pressure-generating, turnover-causing defense that Sean McDermott had in Carolina, that's exactly what he learned under and was a part of in Philadelphia with Jim Johnson. They were turnover-focused. They were aggressive. They were nasty. They were violent. And I like the idea of how this type of defense can complement the Bills offense. You had, that's funny from Ralph, will Kuechly sign for a 1.7. That's very funny. Well done. I like the comparison you made earlier, and it's what I have in my notes. I think it compares to what the Colts defense was when Peyton Manning was there and when they had their Super Bowl run. You had this defense that was built to penetrate and attack, led by Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis and Bullet Bob Sanders, who won defensive MVP their Super Bowl year. Like, it was this fast-flowing, hard-hitting, turnover-generating defense. And if you can replicate that a bit with Sean McDermott's ability to have you also be fundamentally sound, because that's what it is too with Sean McDermott as a defensive coordinator. I mentioned it in some of the quotes earlier. It's not just that they're, fast and physical and violent in terms of, philosophy. They're not just running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Like, they're also fundamentally sound. So you're not just getting breaks in coverage and lapses in judgment. Like, it is controlled, pinpoint aggression and violence. And when you pair that with what this Bills offense can be, this is when you start to see more of a complete picture come together for this team. And again, no disrespect to Leslie Frazier. He had a good run here in Buffalo, but his time may have, literally and figuratively started to run out in terms of what he could get from this defense. And this type of potential philosophical move and stylistic change for the Bills honestly really couldn't have come at a better time, given where, we've seen the previous style of defense potentially run its course.
Right. And so as we transition to the next segment, while you guys have a second, click that like button. Again, leave us a comment, share this later. It goes a long way for this show, for our network. And if you're not an insider, please support us by becoming a premium subscriber, what we call our insiders. You'll get access to, content behind the paywall on the website. We do like uncovered episodes, scouting episodes only for insiders. And then, of course, you have access to the Slack channel, right, Ant?
Oh, the Slack channel is one of the coolest features. We talk about it every time. And it's, one, because we like it, but also two, the insiders, that's usually what their favorite thing is and that what they speak to. So it's that Slack channel where you engage with a really good community of Bills fans. We talk about it all the time. Like, Twitter is Twitter, but there's a lot of toxicity. You don't have that with the Cover One Slack channel. Awesome way to pull up the link there for the One Pass sign up and subscription. The Slack channel is really awesome. There's just general Bills content. There's film. There's a fantasy football channel, and it's a really great community that the brand has built. It's very engaging. It's, not even to make a joke, like, it's a safe space. Like, there's a lot of good back and forth when it comes to what everybody's looking for. And it's going nonstop. Like, my favorite thing with it is always, anytime I put a message in there and I alert the whole channel, it'll be like, you're about to message people in like 9 different time zones. Like, is that okay? Like, because there's people from everywhere and they bring with them their different perspectives. That's funny from Ron saying a bunch of slackers. But it is really great. A lot of my favorite conversations have been off Twitter and just through the Slack channel of members who DM me and just have individual questions, and we go back and forth, or things in the larger threads. It's something that we love as the brand, and that the insiders arguably value the most. Yeah, no doubt about it, man. All right, so on to this next segment, and that's the signing of Taylor Rapp. 1-year deal. Under that, what, $2.5 million barrier, so it doesn't affect the comp pick formula. I mean, this is a guy that many of us, including us here, thought was going to get in that, $10-12 million range. Yeah. And the safety market was just odd altogether. But to get Poyer back was one thing. To get this guy, who we honestly didn't even really want to cover because we didn't think the Bills would be able to afford him, to get him on a 1-year deal as a depth player, but also as a possible chess piece. Yeah. Again, tying into what McDermott can do in the modern football. Yep. It could be interesting what they could do with Taylor Rapp. What's your thoughts on him from the top? I like the signing. You hit a lot of my points right on the head. Like, he was somebody who I had earmarked as potentially filling Jordan Poyer's role. But then when Poyer came back, I was like, okay, like, Rapp just kind of went into the back of my mind, and I didn't think twice about it. And I love what you mentioned about the safety market. It's been so weird. Like, Poyer comes back on a team-friendly deal. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson gets a 1-year, $8 million deal. Rapp is signing for almost like a bare minimum. This is a safety who was part of a Super Bowl winning team, who was a legitimate piece for several years in a very good defense with the Rams under Brandon Staley and under Raheem Morris. Like, he's coverage versatile. He can be used in a lot of ways. And yeah, I think it's really great value, especially considering what he can do as an above average starter, how he can function at multiple levels of the defense, and how he can be used as a chess piece. And I was really surprised by it. I was out of town on Monday and not on Twitter at all. And you texted me and were just like, friggin' bean. And then something about Taylor Rapp. And I was like, wait, what? And I immediately opened and saw the news. Like, I really like it. I also didn't expect it. And it's not, I don't think he's somebody that, oh my God, the Bills just added this all pro safety, but you got safety depth, which they needed. We don't know what's going to happen with DeMar Hamlin. Jaquan Johnson is gone. So like the depth of everybody after Poyer and Hyde was a question mark, but not only can he be depth, you got it, like you said, a legitimate chess piece in terms of what he can do and how he can be used, which we're going to show you folks with the film. I think it's a really good signing, especially given the cost. Oh, an awesome comment from James. James saying, let's smash that like button, boys. That's awesome. I didn't finish reading it until now. These guys are the best tandem in the business. So blessed to have these quality breakdowns in such depth is absolutely amazing. That's awesome, dude. Thank you so much, James.
Yeah, thanks,
really
James.
It.
Appreciate it.
That got me. That was really cool. I lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
And this is why I like him. I keep saying the Bills want to get back to the fundamentals. They missed 13.1% of their tackles last season. That was 31st in the NFL. Now, they also were tops in the league in tackles for loss. So again, it's part of the system. That's that disruption and their ability to attack upfield. That's what McDermott wants to do, especially with the front seven. But when you're talking missed tackle percentage and you're missing that many tackles, you got to get back to the fundamentals. And I think, Taylor Rapp, regardless of what role he plays, this is what you're going to see on every single clip we break down. His tackling. His career missed tackle percentage was 6.6%, which is very, very good. To put it in perspective, he's played 3,304 snaps in his career in the NFL. He's only missed 23 tackles. Some guys on the Bills missed that in one season. Let's be honest. That's true. And so I don't know what role he'll play, but I know when he does play, he's going to make a difference. He's been a fit going back all the way to his Washington days as a Husky. They play, you always hear this regime talk about programs. Iowa is one that they consider a program. They like getting guys from Iowa, not just because of the program that they built up there, but the defense translates very easily to the Bills. That's why Jack Campbell's kind of tied to the Bills in many mocks and in many ways. He just it's just DNA and on the field, like everything just kind of clicks. Yeah. Washington is, for the last, 10 years or so, has had some really good defensive backs, and they play similar system to what the Bills do. And so guys that play in that secondary typically could translate really well into the Bills defense. And I think Rapp is just like that. He's a fit on and off the field, like I said, and I think he's going to be a good addition, regardless of the health of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. He's a guy that, honestly, when I saw that they signed him, I'm like shocked, but I'm also like, hey, make it be longer than 1 year, because he honestly could be in the conversation, and honestly the perfect replacement for either a Jordan Poyer or Micah Hyde down the road.
And that down the road is coming closer than I think people potentially realize. Like, at this time next year, we could be having another conversation, because Micah Hyde is going to be in the exact same scenario as Jordan Poyer, and maybe Micah Hyde doesn't come back, and then you need somebody to replace Hyde. And yeah, I thought the same thing. Once Rapp signed, my initial thought was, okay, probably multi-year. Based on what Poyer got, I was like, okay, maybe like $5 million a year for something like that. And then I saw the one for the minimum, basically. I'm very interested to see what he can bring. I love that you mentioned his career missed tackle percentage. That's my favorite thing about him, that he's a sure tackler, and it happens at all three levels, whether he's at the line of scrimmage, in the intermediate, or deep. He's a sure tackler, whether around the line of scrimmage or coming from depth or in space. To put it in perspective for people, just for 2022, there were 269 defensive players in 2022 that had at least 50% of defensive snaps. Taylor Rapp was tied for the 29th lowest missed tackle percentage at 6.3%. So that career stat for you, Eric, that you mentioned, his career missed tackle percentage of 6.6, that's basically what he is every year. That's not because he had a really great year of like 1.3 and it balanced out. That's what he is every year. Again, this is a dude who was entrusted to wear a variety of hats for this Rams defense. And I mean, in the Super Bowl, he was functioning as their dime linebacker, covering Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase out of the slot and matching them. Like, he gives you some versatility, some variability on a defense that has some questions and some potential philosophical changes going forward. So it's a really interesting signing.
Right. And as Ant said, he can make plays and tackles at all three levels. Here, we're going to see him in that too high look. And then post snap, as the Falcons run that split zone, he comes down and the tackling technique is on point. Look at how low he gets his pads. He gets up under that bigger running back, and then you see him wrap those legs up. His tackling technique is some of the best I honestly ever studied. It's just so consistent. When he goes for these 2-leg wraps, almost like, I honestly looked up, like, is this guy, has he ever wrestled? Because his 2-leg takedowns and single leg takedowns were that good. Here's a double leg takedown here by Rapp from depth. Again, just something he does so well. Here, Anthony, here's one. They run a crack toss to McCaffrey on the edge, and you're going to see him fill from depth again, and then watch him attack that near leg. Doesn't try lighting him up in the alley, attacks that near leg, snags it, and minimizes that run. This is just, I mean, clinic tape on how to tackle.
What I love about him coming into contact, almost no matter where he is, like you said, that clinic tape, his head is up. He's leading with that shoulder. He's coming across the body. And usually, when I say usually, I mean like 90-95% of the time, he's hitting with impact, but he's also wrapping. Like, so no pun intended, like Taylor Rapp wraps up when he makes his tackles and he goes through. He doesn't stop his feet. You see him dip. You see the flexibility. You see the bend in his body, but then the ability in the force and the impact combined with the technique. Like, it's not an accident that his career missed tackle percentage is 6.6%. He plays fast in short areas, but he plays under control, keeps his head up, eye on the prize, wraps, twists, goes through. And again, those type of tackles happen time and time again against receivers, tight ends, running backs. He's always just attacking those thighs and that knee area, grabbing, wrapping up, and taking down.
Yeah, here's another one. Watch Jones, all right? Watch this run. He gets into that second level. Here comes Rapp. And just watch how much more yardage Jones doesn't get after this. Watch him wrap that leg up and, again, rolls and stops him. Like, Jones can't even take another step. Nope. He's wrapping around, looking to pick his leg up and then just stop him in his tracks. Like, that is just ridiculous tackling technique. And he's just so consistent. And I think your point about working through the tackle, like this one, he's more of like a wrap and roll, but he does more times than not work through that hip or work through that near thigh with force to stop the force of the running back. And then again, wrap that leg, then kind of roll. Like this one, he just literally stops Jones from getting any more yardage.
Yeah, he stops him dead in his tracks. And the ability to just, like, there's no forward movement for Aaron Jones. Like, he grabs onto that leg and it's like he got stuck in cement and his momentum is stopped, and that's due to Taylor Rapp and his ability to do it from depth. Eric, we've talked about it so much for how important that is in today's NFL, but especially in this Bills defense, given the too high looks and coverages you want to run, whether you're the Bills or any team, you have to be able to come from depth under control, but also with purpose. And he succeeds in that area. That's my number one quality in looking at safeties in today's NFL, especially for the Bills. Can they come from depth? What does their track record look like of fitting the run from depth, whether you're just fitting as a spill player or a force player, but more importantly, coming into that alley and making a tackle, and he succeeds time and time again.
Yeah, and this is one of those creative type defenses from the Rams. So they have, 4 defensive linemen, 1 linebacker, and Bobby Wagner, and then you're going to see Rapp right here along the hashes. So it's a 4-1-6 defense, a dime defense. Yes. But honestly, you see the front. It's nothing crazy. They kind of overload the 3 defensive linemen to the top, put Bobby Wagner, again, kind of like Sean McDermott, how he would have Thomas Davis to the running back side there. And you're going to see them just spin to cover 3. There's your cover 3. You got your 4 defenders underneath, 3 defenders back. And Rapp is sitting right here as the hook the curl defender. He sees that tight end Fant coming across the middle. This is 3rd down. What does he do? Wraps him up and brings him down short of the sticks, just inside the 20-yard line. This is the type of stuff that we do want to see more of, some different personnel groupings, but spinning to different coverages and different looks, not being as vanilla and predictable like we saw under Leslie Frazier.
This is a really intriguing piece for me, with especially depending on what happens at linebacker for the Bills. If they draft one early, if they go after Jack Campbell or a Trenton Simpson, or do they stick with Bernard and then what they already have on the roster, or go for a lower tier free agent? And then either way, what does that mean for the defense? Because one of the things I really like, and it's on this play, is what Taylor Rapp can do as that dime linebacker. He's really good in the middle of the field as that hook curl defender, whether he's starting on that second level in an off-ball linebacker position like he is here, or whether he's, the buzz safety coming down from depth. And a lot of it for me is his ability to read coverages, his ability to squeeze and choke, but it's that tackling in the middle. Like even on this one where he lunges, when he's lunging, you saw it on the previous play with the Aaron Jones tackle as well. When he lunges, he's either wrapping or he's still getting chest on knee. This one, he doesn't get as much chest on knee, but it's still wrapping. He aims at that leg, to use that, like, I'm not a wrestler, but what is it? Like you pick the leg, right?
Yeah, the ankle pick. It's an ankle pick.
Thank you. I was so close. Like it looks purposeful, and it is. Like that's how he operates. He's just a very technical tackler. He's athletic. He doesn't have the most long speed, but he's athletic in those short areas. And I think he's really intriguing as a dime linebacker for a Bills defense that struggled on third downs, and how he was deployed in looks and alignments like that. It really worked out.
Right. And, we talked about that creativity and what they're going to do at Mike. I mean, we don't know if they're going to go with Bernard, Spector, or Dotson, but if say Dotson does win it, he's obviously not all that good in coverage. One option they could go to is using Rapp as that quasi linebacker.
Yeah.
And you see the Rams kind of how they would cover up some of Bobby Wagner. Again, a Hall of Fame player, but he's lost some of his athleticism, especially range and coverage. Watch how they kind of cover up that tendency here. So Juju's running a crossing route. This is a drive concept between Juju and Travis Kelce. Rapp is circled to the top, and he's working with Bobby Wagner on that concept. And so right there, you see Bobby Wagner take the high man right here. Travis Kelce, he's running that deeper in-breaking route, but then he passes him on to Taylor Rapp. You see Rapp pivot, get his eyes on Kelce. He lets Bobby Wagner know, hey, I got him. Go get that short crosser. So now that's how you kind of minimize guys that may not have the range of a Tremaine Edmonds or a Matt Milano. So you can use Rapp as that linebacker in obvious pass situations, right? Obvious pass situations, not situations where you're at, first or second down. But you see this high-low is taken away, and the ball is batted by Bobby Wagner as Mahomes goes into that scramble drill. Here it is from the end zone angle. Again, eye candy coming across the formation. Both Wagner and Rapp get their eyes on Travis Kelce. You better in the red zone. Rapp cuts and chokes off that route, and it forces Mahomes to go into scramble drill mode and try to create, and Wagner gets a piece of it, and the ball's not able to make it to Travis Kelce. So this is just some creative stuff you can do with Rapp if needed, if McDermott wants to switch up some of the scheme that he has in place.
I think this is another thing that excited me about the Rapp signing, was knowing the defense that he came from and what was asked of him from a coverage standpoint. Those too high looks and that match coverage, like that's a piece that the Bills incorporate, and that's a piece that NFL defenses are using to combat NFL offenses. Mahomes breaks out of the pocket here, not because of the pressure, not because the pocket is destroyed. He breaks out because he wants to go to the middle right here. Like he's eyeing either Kelce or the crosser coming over on this drive concept. Like, again, that classic high-low, and they're both gone. And that's because of what the Rams are doing on the back end to match and the communication. And it starts with Taylor Rapp. Like, he calls out the motion immediately. He picks up Kelce deep. He almost gets the interception on this play a little bit. Like, this is a nice piece to add. Again, whether it's in the red zone or whether it's in known passing downs or on third down situations in particular, to be able to have that third safety and put him down into the box, that allows you to be creative. He also can blitz a little bit too. So it's just really exciting. Again, it may not, I feel like some people are going to be like, guys, he signed like a 1 year, like $2 million deal. It can't be that exciting, but it actually is, given how this roster is already made and what his skill set allows the defense to do further.
All right, and here's another one of those creative type personnel groupings. So it looks like there's only 3 down linemen or 3 defenders here, but this is the 4th defensive lineman right there, 1 linebacker, and then Rapp is, again, that quasi linebacker. And this is probably my favorite trait aside from tackling when we're talking coverage, his ability to play that robber, to play the middle of the field and sense routes over the middle. So the Raiders are trying to hit Davante Adams over the middle on the logo right there, and Rapp picks him off. They're running the classic dagger concept where you have the number 3 right here running this deep over right to that safety to occupy him. And then you're having a clearing route from number 2 and then a deep dig from Davante Adams, much deeper than that, but he's breaking inside. And so this safety is out of the play right here. This guy cannot help over the middle because of that deep over route. This safety is, pretty deep. There's no way that he's going to get to Davante Adams. So this is where the ball is expected to go and where Derek Carr tries throwing it. But watch Rapp slide into this window and sense it as that dig route, that dagger route's coming over the middle, gains just enough depth, and then high points it for the interception. Very heady play from him, understanding that, hey, he doesn't have help in the hole right here or in the deep post because that guy's far too deep. So just great work from Rapp here to get the interception last year.
And I also think, if I'm correct, I think this was the interception that ended the game.
Yes.
After the Rams, had scored this the Baker Mayfield game. That's crazy that we're saying that. But yeah, really good feel from Taylor Rapp to understand, 1, the situation, 2, know his responsibility, and then 3, recognize where the potential holes are or vulnerabilities in the defense. This isn't him, matching this time. This is him kind of in more of a spot drop coverage look, reading the quarterback, feeling what's going on, and he just finds work. He doesn't just cover grass. He works following Derek Carr's eyes. I would imagine he's seeing some sort of that peripheral action or gets a call out from one of his outside guys, knowing that Davante Adams is coming on that deep dig, and he just keeps flowing with it, recognizes the precarious spot that Carr is in with the pressure on him because he's reading the quarterback, and then makes an athletic play at the catch point. Again, he's responsible in that interior of the field, depending on how you're using him, whether he's coming from depth as a robber or he's a low hole player or a lurk, or just in traditional zone coverage and the hook curls. And again, that's a spot that could really potentially mitigate. Oh, that's a beautiful hit. Could potentially mitigate the loss of Tremaine Edmonds, who is extremely strong in the middle of the field.
Right. And here's some eye candy. So you're going to see the Broncos look left there, like they're throwing a swing. Then they come back like they're throwing a screen to the right. And they're just hitting that little pop pass over the middle. And you can see Rapp coming from his safety position. And then again, working through the tackle and the thigh boards. I mean, again, textbook wrap up there from Taylor Rapp. And then separating the guy from the ball. It just such a forceful, technical tackle. I just love watching this guy play.
It's a really good violent play. And what's even better in today's NFL, like where you can't hit anybody up high, like this has no shot of drawing a flag in any way, shape, or form because he goes low. And to be able to generate that kind of impact and to be able to cause that type of whiplash on the upper body, like as soon as bang right there, as soon as Rapp hits 80 in his thighs, his upper body of the tight end there like snaps. You see the whiplash immediately. You have to hit a dude wicked hard, especially a big tight end like that, to be able to cause that type of torque and that type of whiplash action on their body on the hit, let alone what happens when he hits the ground. Like that's just a good, clean, violent hit. And it's also, on top of being a clean, violent hit, it's also tremendously technically sound, which again, we continue to see because it's part of his repertoire and it's something that the Bills needed.
Right, and watch him drop down into the hole here. Play action fake. So he gets his eyes on the ball, starts going towards his run fit, but then realizes, oh, it's a pass. Here comes Debo on that deep over route. Look at him take that away. Just choke that route out. He's not able to get it to Debo. That play is meant, this Yankee concept type wide receiver concept is meant to go to Debo. Quarterback has to hold on to it, and that's when you see trouble. Here comes the pass rush, and I think it's Ashawn Robinson that causes the fumble there. But just great work at taking away Debo over the middle on this play action pass.
And that's not an easy thing to do. It's easy to get fooled by the eye candy. It's easy to get beat by Debo Samuel, but Rapp immediately comes out of, he respects the run and he comes forward. And as soon as he sees that it's going to be play action, I like how he IDs it, immediately turns. He knows who he's responsible for, what's coming, immediately turns, picks up Debo in a similar fashion to how we picked up Travis Kelce in the red zone on that play that we showed earlier. That's a smart, heady play. It's him knowing his responsibility. It's him knowing what the offense is doing. And again, you show the physical aspect, you show the violence, but you show the coverage savvy. It all just continue again to add to that value that they got in Taylor Rapp.
And this is something that he did a bunch of, too high look, pre-snap, post-snap, dropping down as that buzz defender, a hook to curl area. And this is just simple cover 3. But watch him key on Deebo Samuel running this crossing route right here. And once again, tackling comes into play. Wraps that leg up, stops him short of the sticks there. He's not able to get yards after the catch on this second down play. Just a great tackle coming from that too high look into the hook to curl area as that buzz defender, and then wrapping up the elusive wide receiver, running back, do it all type wide receiver.
Yeah, that's not easy to tackle Debo one-on-one anywhere, but especially in the open field when he's coming full speed across. And again, this is the type of play that you saw a lot from Rapp in that 2021 season, coming from depth and just clamping down on overs and drags and digs, and his ability to meet receivers at the catch point and tackle them almost immediately and not really give any yard after contact opportunity or potential. And again, look for anyone in case you needed more evidence of it. What are you seeing? You're seeing head up. You're seeing him attack that leg. You're seeing him pick the ankle. I got the wrestling term right this time. He goes after that lower body. He's not out of control. He's not just going for a big hit. And
it's like he's dead weight. As soon as he latches on, he becomes dead weight.
Oh, yeah.
And that guy can't go anywhere. It's amazing.
Good call. Yeah, he just latches on and he's like, go ahead, try and drag me.
Drag
me.
Can't.
All right, cool. Yeah, drag me, but you can't. And it's fun because usually we see a lot like guys who are technical tacklers don't really bring the wood when they hit dudes, and dudes who bring the wood usually aren't the most technically sound. And what we continue to show you folks here is he has the best of both worlds. Like he has impact on contact, but he's also technically sound at the same time. And that's a tremendous coverage in general, but especially that's a tremendous attribute in general, but especially for a team like the Bills that struggled in those areas.
Right. And this is the last play, again, dropping down in that cover 3. This is more of, I think he's a flats defender here, but hey guys, make sure to hit that like button. Again, leave us a comment after.
Yes,
we appreciate everyone tuning into this breakdown. It's been fun thus far. This is the last play of the breakdown. So again, watch them rotate and drop him down into the underneath area. He's that flats defender, but really they're kind of matching here because of the formation being 3-by-1. And watch him light up the running back. But you see, it's forceful. But what does he do, Ant? He goes for the legs and wraps him up. So on third down, they take a few yard loss here, 3 or 4 yard loss because of the fine tackling, but forceful tackling by Taylor Rapp in that flats area.
Again, not an upper body hitter in terms of where he hits the ball carrier, receiver, tight end, running back, whatever. He's going for the waist. He's going for those legs. You see chest on knee. You see him go through his man. That's what causes DJ Dallas to kind of spin around here. Head up, goes for the wrap, no pun intended. Textbook, clinical, over and over. And what's, again, even better on this is third down. So you don't even need to like bring the wood. Just make a smart play, but he does both because when he comes forward with physicality and impact, he brings his technique with him. And this is something that the Rams did a bunch. You see in the game against Kansas City this past year as well. Like he's matching with McKinnon coming out of the backfield and just clamps down on him on second down to force third down. Like his ability to take good angles, especially considering he doesn't have the best long speed. I believe he ran like a 4.7 coming out, which is what knocked him a little bit in the draft, even though he, still went in the second round of the Rams. But a smart player, knows how to leverage space, and then when he gets to the tackle point, he's as sure as they come.
Yeah, he's again a fun player and a player that we had kind of on the peripheral, like, hey, this is a guy that could take over for Poyer if Poyer leaves, but he would cost a lot. But the Bills, I don't want to say they got lucky. I think one thing we can say about the acquisitions that the Bills made, including Taylor Rapp, is that their scouting department, man, A+. Like the guys that they added to the building with the small amount of money that Bean and these guys are playing with, like some of the picks that they have, or the acquisitions they have, I'm just so excited about, because they have a chance to be impact players for pennies on the dollar.
That's such a hugely important piece, because not that it's easy for everyone if they have cap space, but like it's significantly easier to have a good off season if you've got, $50 million in cap space and it's like, oh, okay, let's just go sign all the best guys because we have all this money. It's
Right.
harder to be able to put together a roster when you have to nickel and dime it to a degree. You have to be smart. You have to be savvy. You have to be more economical. And to get the skill set diversity on both sides of the ball that the Bills have this offseason, given exactly like you said, their limited financial capital, they've really done a good job. And honestly, that's been a hallmark under Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott since they took over. Like their continued ability to get value out of the free agent classes year after year. Even I know what some guys turned into later, but even initially what John Feliciano was, and Quentin Spain and Ty Secchi, and look what Cole Beasley and John Brown were when the Bills signed them, and people were like, oh, those aren't good receivers to sign. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, now Cole Beasley is getting all pro votes. Look what he became. Like your ability to identify what's needed and to be able to have the right monetary valuation to bring those players in. It honestly, nobody hits 100 and bats 1,000, but this is part of the track record of Brandon Beane year after year. And for an offseason that they didn't have a ton of space and wasn't going to be very sexy, they've hit on a lot of good economical moves that are rounding out the team and filling some roles that they needed to have.
Right. And so, one of the things that McDermott did a lot of in 2015 to 2016 is played their base defense. So we call it the big nickel, the Buffalo nickel, but really it was Thomas Davis, Luke Kuechly, and Shaq Thompson for, I want to say 32.7% of the time. That was the fifth most over those 2 years. So I don't think the Bills have the linebackers right now to do something like that, but I see a lot of people complaining about Taylor Rapp's 4.7 40 and all that. This is what we're talking about. Maybe they don't have 3 linebackers that they could roll out there, but when they do play teams that have multiple tight ends and are passing teams with those tight ends, they could bring a guy like Rapp in as that quasi linebacker, as that big nickel. Again, he's just a shade under 6 foot, but he's 208 pounds versus, having nickel dog Taron Johnson out there, who we love. Again, he can do it. But when you play multiple tight ends, you want to have a guy with a little more size. But again, you want to have a guy that's a good tackler, whether he's coming from depth, whether he's out as an overhang player or in the box. And Rapp could be that versatile chess piece that they could use in some of those sets instead of, using a Saran Neal. You can use a Taylor Rapp.
Yeah, there's not the coverage liability that you have with a Saran Neal. But you also have that physical boost that you don't necessarily want to put onto the shoulders of Taron Johnson all the time. One of the pieces that I like for Taylor Rapp as well is his ability to really kind of bully tight ends in the run game, like his ability to stack and shed. He's got that ability to attack shoulders. He can extend. He throws guys down. He's violent with his hands. He has some shock and pop in his hands. I like his ability to win around the line of scrimmage in that regard. You see it against the Chiefs this past year, his ability to take on Fortson and Justin Watson, who's a receiver, but is around 215 pounds, his ability to attack them and function as a force player, but then shed and make the tackle because of how he can function in that area and within that role. Again, it's not the sexiest signing, but I think, oh, that's awesome, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you so much for being here, but also thank you very much for the super chat and the comment too, saying great show, guys. Thanks. We appreciate you, Sarah. Thank you so much. I lose my train of thought when the nice things happen. I forget. His ability around the box, the stack and shed piece, and having it in a bigger bodied guy that is not a liability in coverage, like you mentioned, in the lead in to the Taylor Rapp piece here on this episode. It's just a chess piece. It gives you another option, another dial to turn, another lever to pull, and that's never a bad thing.
Right. And Steven asks, how much do we think McDermott changes the scheme with the new players? I don't want to say change the scheme because I don't think the language is going to change. I think all of that's pretty much in place. But I do think he makes some tweaks to, again, some of the defensive structure stuff, the timing of some blitzes and some of those pressures. And I think he's going to be a lot more involved than what we thought he was the last couple years when Frazier was running the defense. I think he's going to be so much more hands-on that the pressure is going to be on Eric Washington to perform and to game plan properly. Because you got to remember, positional coaches and positional assistants, they all usually throughout the week for a game plan, they'll get the information from the pro scouts of the upcoming opponent, tendencies and stuff like that. But then it's up to the positional coaches and guys designated to come up with, hey, you're in charge of 3rd and 6+, or you're in charge of 3rd and short, and come up with the game plan or plays or concepts they're going to use in those situations. And so, hey, maybe Eric Washington isn't living up to those expectations that McDermott had thought he had, going back to their time in Carolina. So I think that's the type of pressure he's going to put on his defense. And I don't know if they'll be as good advanced metric wise next year, but I do know, as we talked about several times in the breakdown, especially during the film, is they're going to hunt, they're going to be violent, and they're going to be in your face. And that's all you can ask for. Instead of sitting back on 3rd and 8, sitting 8 yards off in off coverage when, a simple pressure could get the ball out of the quarterback's hand or cause them to hold on a little more with some press coverage so your D-line can get home. So they needed a curveball. The fastball, they've had the fastball for so many years under Leslie Frazier. Now's the time to throw that curveball. And that curveball is Leslie Frazier, or Sean McDermott, sorry.
Oh, so close. No, you're good. I think I echo a lot of your similar sentiments. The one domino piece that I think could still potentially change things schematically, and it's something, Eric, you and I have talked about, with Tremaine Edmonds leaving, with how much the coverages they were able to play were tied to his skill set and his frame. We've talked about it a bunch on this show in previous episodes, the type of coverages that you may have to lean into in his absence. I think that could potentially change depending on who they fill that role with. Now, if it's a Jack Campbell, if it's a Trenton Simpson, or these guys who could potentially mitigate things, or if they truly are comfortable with a Terrell Bernard and Tyrell Dodson platoon, and then mixing in Taylor Rapp as a dime linebacker, I think that could potentially, not necessarily schematic change everything, but in terms of what they really lean into a bit more is the one domino effect that I'm interested to see. But yeah, spot on with everything else. I think the biggest change you're going to see is, and I feel like this is a stupid thing to say because you can't really quantify it, but I just expect to see more attitude. I expect to see more bite. I expect to see more fast flowing. I expect, if you're watching the game on the broadcast, I expect you to see more like flashes of just white Bills helmets, like just blurs. I expect to see guys just moving like heat-seeking missiles, headhunting, like you said, going to that comment that Asante Samuel said about playing for Jim Johnson that Sean McDermott has taken on. His dogs were dogs, and he was going to cut them loose on you one way or another. That was a Jim Johnson piece. That's clearly a Sean McDermott piece based on what he learned under Jim Johnson, what he did in Carolina. And I expect that. I expect to see more violence, more attitude, more fast flowing to the football, more pushing of the buttons and forcing the hand of an offense and making them really have to adjust to you rather than you adjusting to them.
And real quick, before we get out of here, Nikki's point right here, maybe even play more cover 3, any system that doesn't let the quick timing teams beat us. We struggled in that last year. And he's got a good point, because last season, I just looked it up, the Bills played cover 3, which is the most universal coverage when we're looking at how often teams play coverages. Cover 3 is usually the higher percentage of all the coverages. The Bills were 31st in that regard. They played cover 3, 25.9%. Again, it's a high percentage, but relative to the league, it's quite low. So again, mixing in some of those single high looks, whether it's cover 1 man, like we saw in a lot of those pressures, or those cover 3 looks, whether they're fire zone blitzes, but still rolling into that cover 3. That is something that I agree with Nikki. I think they need to get into more cover 3 looks. And it's something they did on the back half of last year. Once Trey White got back into the lineup, I did a study on that last season. Once Trey White got back in the lineup, they went to more cover 3. I do expect it a little more this coming season.
And it also tied into some Von Miller being absent as well. So weeks 1, so this isn't just cover 1 or cover 3. This is both of them together. So weeks 1 through 11, again, with Von Miller, 56% of the time, the Bills were in 2 high coverages post snap. weeks 12 through 18, that percentage dropped to 42%. So they had a 14 percentage point drop in two high coverages. They were predominantly a single high team post snap weeks 12 through 18 for a variety of reasons. So again, we'll see those dials turning. It's exciting, honestly. And we're not just saying it. Like, you have a head coach with a very good track record as a defensive coordinator who is from a legendary coaching tree on the defensive side of the ball. It's talked about all the time. Like, these guys were from the Bill Walsh tree, and then guys who were from the Mike Holmgren tree. And now everybody's talking about who's from the Shanahan tree or the Fangio tree and so on and so forth. McDermott is kind of in his own, but he comes from a successful lineage in terms of coaching pedigree, in terms of who he learned from and what he's able to do on his own. And I think with what he brings, Eric, it's exciting for this Bills defense potentially coming into the season. It's another piece for us to focus on potentially moving forward in this offseason, whether in free agency still or in the NFL draft, because now that we know Sean McDermott is going to be the play caller, we can kind of formulate potential moves going forward in terms of fitting into that identity and structure that Sean McDermott has.
Yeah, and as you said, his lineage coming and not just playing and coaching under Andy Reid, but more so Jim Johnson, and then playing and coaching under Ron Rivera.
Yeah.
That dichotomy is interesting because, Jim Johnson did a little bit of both. You saw a lot of those fire zone blitzes and stuff like that, but he also played a lot of in-your-face type man coverage with smaller defensive backs, Sheldon Brown, Tito Shepard, guys like that.
Asante Samuel.
Asante Samuel. And so when he got to Carolina, Ron Rivera is more of that Tampa 2 cover 3 type zone type coverages. So you saw him bring some of that aggressiveness from the Jim Johnson to Carolina. We broke down a bunch of that film. And so he's got the Rolodex. He's got the experience. He's coached as a coordinator and call plays in big games. Once he gets going, man, I'm excited about this defense. And as you said, kind of projecting some of the guys in the draft, because they're going to get several guys in this draft to play for the defensive side of the ball. That's going to be exciting to see. Once those guys are chosen, we'll be breaking them down.
We will definitely have you covered here on the brand as a whole, but especially in the film room for anything and everything you need for like what we've had in free agency, for the new signings, for new news, to be able to show you folks what these new players can bring or what the news means. Again, something as simple as, this new guy signed, or something a little bit more complex in terms of this new coach or this new coordinator, similar to what we did last year when Aaron Kromer came aboard. And you folks know that will continue going forward with any other free agents that are signed, any other structural or coaching changes that are made or news that drops. And then especially come draft time, as we get to break down the players that the Buffalo Bills draft. Potentially, we may have a draft focus episode next week on the Cover One Film Room.
That was supposed to be tonight, but we're going to try to do it next week.
Correct. You will potentially get that unless another shoe drops for the Buffalo Bills in terms of signing or anything else that takes priority. But that'll be the continued focus for us here in the film room. And Eric, any parting words for any of the people as we start to wind down here on the show?
If you're looking for a more centralized breakdown of just Rapp, I did a video on him. It's 18 minutes long.
It's very good.
A lot of his plays from the last couple of years. Check that out on the YouTube channel. And as Ant said, next week on the docket as of right now, if you guys are into the draft and you're into, rumors connecting to the Bills, to certain players, or, this coach was at X Pro Day, or this personnel was at so-and-so's Pro Day, that's the show topic for next week. We're gonna go through a bunch of those players and what coaches or what front office personnel were at those pro days, and what does it mean, if it means anything. And obviously there's going to be film, so some of those guys that we talk about, we'll be breaking them down too, and again projecting them into the Bills offensive or defensive schemes, as we always do in the film room every Wednesday night at 7 p.m.
Every single Wednesday. Although next Wednesday will be a little bit of a switcheroo. We will be live. True. We will be live Wednesday at 9 p.m. And Greg and Aaron for Cover One Buffalo will be next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Greg, is a real jerk, and he's going to Disney World with his family. What a selfish, rude
So we got to take one for the family, all right?
We got to accommodate Greg and his family, so we'll be switching times next week, Wednesday, but regularly find us here live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Next Wednesday, again, live Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. And for a lot of you folks in the chat, saw the comments coming through, certain players or prospects offensively and defensively that you folks asked us, oh, have you guys watched this player? What's your thought on this guy? A lot of them will be spoken about and broken down film-wise next Wednesday. Again, provided no news or anything else happens that gets us off topic again for the third week in a row. Man, another exciting one, Eric. Just more news, more potential signings coming in, some philosophical and schematic pieces. This is, again, things are starting to really take shape for this Buffalo Bills team in this 2023 season. And as you folks know, we will have you covered every single week here in the Cover One Film Room. For those of you who joined us live, thank you so much for being here, for your back and forth with each other, your back and forth with us, the live engagement, the questions, the thoughts, the comments, concerns, everything. It makes these shows significantly a lot more enjoyable for us when we see the ticker in the top left of our screen for the live viewers just going up and seeing the comments just keep rolling through and the back and forth. It's a tremendous thing to see. So we appreciate all the live viewers for joining us on this episode. If you did not join us live, that's cool as well. Thank you very much for your post-live view, listen, download, whatever have you. And whether you're watching here on YouTube live or later, like Erica said, please drop a like. Likes go a significantly long way towards helping us to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears, taking this episode and this channel and bumping it up more and giving it priority for YouTube and hitting more traffic beacons and all those things with the algorithm. So please, if you enjoyed this, drop a like. If you're listening on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's cool too and appreciate it too. Please rate and review and subscribe to the show there. Genuine ratings are tremendously appreciated. If you have feedback for us in terms of what we did well, what you'd like to see more of, hit us with that on the podcasting app. Subscribe there. Subscribe here on YouTube. I think that about does it for us here in this episode of the Cover One Film Room. Thank you again to all the kind words that have been coming through in the end. We appreciate those. Thank you very much to Sarah for the super chat earlier. Appreciate the hell out of that. Thank you very much to AJ, the man behind the scenes, helping us as we roll through every episode here in the film room. And that'll do it for us. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. We will see you next week at a different time, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, for another episode of the Cover One Film Room. And until then, Godspeed. And as always, go Bills.